The first scream didn't come from our campsite. It came from somewhere above us, in a part of the forest where no human could have been standing. That was the moment everything inside me froze. Not because of the scream itself, high, sharp, echoing through the trees like metal being torn apart, but because of the direction it came from. There was nothing above us except a ridge of jagged rock and a massive cluster of pines. Yet the scream sounded like it came from 10 feet above my head, suspended in the air. I remember Joe dropping the bundle of firewood he was carrying. I remember Sam whispering, "What the hell was that?" under his breath. But most of all, I remember the way the forest reacted, instantly and violently, as if the trees themselves flinched. The wind stopped. The insects went silent. Even the fire crackling in front of us seemed to flatten into a dull hiss. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. We had been out there for less than 2 hours. We hadn't even finished setting up camp. And already the forest felt aware. Like it was holding its breath. Watching. Waiting. Joe tried to laugh it off. Probably an animal. But even he didn't believe that. His voice trembled too much. Animals don't scream like they're begging for their lives. The scream came again. This time closer. Lower. Broken like whoever or whatever made it had shredded their own throat doing it the first time. Sam stepped back toward me, his flashlight shaking in his hand. I could feel his panic without even looking at him. I could feel my own heartbeat slamming against my ribs like it was trying to escape. The fire flickered violently as if something huge had just moved behind us. We all turned. Nothing. Just the dark Treeline, too dark, too still, too empty. But I swear I felt something standing there. Tall. Cold. Silent. Staring. The air around us changed. Heavy enough that it felt like trying to breathe through wet cement. My mouth went dry. My ears rang. And for a full 5 seconds none of us moved. Not even a twitch. Then, a branch snapped. Loud. Deliberate. Close. We sprinted for the tent without saying a word, stumbling over roots, kicking up dirt, tripping over each other because none of us wanted to be the one at the back. I dove inside the tent and zipped it shut so fast the zipper burned my fingers. Joe and Sam collapsed beside me, gasping, staring at the nylon walls like they expected something to tear through at any second. Outside silence. No footsteps. No breathing. No movement. Just that suffocating, unnatural stillness like the entire forest was waiting for something. Waiting for us to make the wrong decision. Joe whispered, "Did you see it?" Sam whispered back, "No, but it saw us." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Because the truth was worse than anything either of them admitted. I did see something. Not its shape. Not its face. Not even its body. Just a pair of eyes. Two faint, pale reflections staring back at me from the Treeline. Too high for any animal. Too steady for any person. And too emotionless for anything alive. And those eyes didn't blink. Not once. All I could think was, we weren't supposed to be here. We should have never come to this forest. And whatever screamed out there wasn't done with us yet. I never understood why people said the forest could swallow the noise of the world. But that evening, standing at the edge of the campsite with nothing but the soft hum of the wind brushing against my ears, I finally got it. My name is Adil, and I wasn't out there looking for adventure or danger or anything dramatic. I just wanted a break from everything: work, traffic, the constant vibration of notifications, the people who always needed something. Life had become one long buzzing sound. So when my friends backed out at the last minute, I still decided to go alone. I just wanted quiet. The forest I chose wasn't far from home. A 2-hour drive, a simple trail, and a public campsite that people usually visited during the summer. But now, in early winter, it was practically empty. The air was cool but soft. The way it gets before December truly sharpens it. The sun was already leaning toward the horizon when I arrived, an orange glow spilling through the trees like warm honey. I set my tent up slowly, taking my time, enjoying every second of the silence. No cars. No voices. No phones ringing. Just the rhythm of the forest, the rustle of leaves, the distant crack of a branch under its own weight, the scattered chirps of birds readying themselves for night. Everything felt gentle, safe, peaceful. I placed my backpack inside the tent and unrolled my sleeping bag. The tent fabric smelled like old plastic and dust, but it was familiar in a comforting way, like stepping back into childhood camping trips with my father. I smiled at the memory. I hadn't thought about those trips in years. By the time I finished setting up, dusk had settled. Not darkness. Just that soft blue moment when the world holds its breath. I walked a few steps toward the Treeline and inhaled deeply. The air was crisp, clean, almost sweet. My mood felt lighter than it had in months. Out here my thoughts weren't racing. They were calm, slow, almost lazy. For the first time in a long time I wasn't stressed. I wasn't overthinking. I wasn't anticipating anything. I took out a small portable stove and heated some noodles, watching the flame flicker gently under the pot. The warmth felt nice against the growing chill. I ate slowly, listening to the forest settling into night. A distant owl called out. Somewhere far off, a creek whispered over rocks. The wind carried the scent of pine and damp leaves. After dinner, I grabbed my flashlight and took a short walk around the empty campsite. My boots crunched softly against the soil. There was no one else there, no tents, no vehicles, no voices. And strangely, that didn't worry me. It felt like the forest had been reserved just for me. Like I finally had a moment that belonged to no one else. I sat on a fallen log and watched the sky deepen from blue to near black. Stars began appearing one by one, sharp and bright, unblocked by city lights. A quiet smile tugged at my lips. Peace, real peace. Felt almost unreal. I checked the time. 8:14 p.m. Early enough that I didn't feel tired, but late enough that the world around me had grown fully still. The trees stood dark and tall, their silhouettes swaying gently. Everything looked perfectly normal. Perfectly safe. At least that's what I thought then. Because nothing felt even slightly wrong. No tension. No unease. No warning at all. Just a calm forest, a quiet night, and me, completely unaware of what was already watching from somewhere between those trees. It must have been around 9 when the peaceful silence of the forest began to change. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but in a way that I only noticed because I'd been listening so closely to the quiet. The wind had stopped. Not slowed, stopped. The trees were no longer rustling. The branches had become perfectly still, as if the whole forest had paused mid-breath. First, I didn't think much of it. Forests have moods. Weather shifts. Maybe the air was settling. But then I realized something else. The birds had gone silent too. No distant hoots, no fluttering wings. Not even the soft chirps that usually continue through the night. The entire place felt muted, like someone had lowered an invisible volume slider, until everything faded into one heavy, unnatural quiet. I tried to dismiss it, but a strange tightness pressed into my chest. Not fear, just awareness. Like the feeling of being in a room and suddenly realizing someone else walked in. I shook it off, zipped up my jacket, and stepped toward the edge of the trees. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness in a thin, pale line. The forest looked the same as before. Tall pines, scattered branches, a faint trail disappearing into the dark. But something about it felt different, harder to look at. The shadows felt thicker. The air felt heavier. I couldn't explain why. A soft sound made me freeze. Crunch. Just one step, one footfall on dry leaves. I swept my light toward the noise, but the beam only revealed an empty stretch of trees. No movement. No animals bolting away. Nothing. Probably a deer, I told myself. Or a stray branch falling. Forests are full of little noises. Nothing strange. Except, I'd been hearing the forest for hours, and that sound hadn't matched anything I'd heard all evening. I backed up a little, suddenly more aware of how fragile my little campsite was. My tent looked ridiculously small. My fire pit was barely glowing. The empty darkness around me felt too big, too quiet, too ready. I tried to distract myself by rearranging some of my gear, but even that felt wrong. My hands moved quickly, almost nervously. I kept glancing over my shoulder without meaning to. Every time I looked at the Treeline I felt observed. Like something behind those trees had tilted its head ever so slightly in my direction. The feeling didn't come like a jump scare. It was slow, creeping up from the base of my spine, inching higher each minute. My breath felt louder. My heartbeat felt out of place in the silence. I kept telling myself I was being dramatic, that being alone in the woods naturally made tiny sounds seem bigger and stranger. But then it happened again. Crunch. This time softer, like someone shifting their weight rather than stepping. I raised my flashlight. Just trees. Tall. Motionless. Empty. The logical part of my mind said it was an animal. But the emotional part? It whispered something else. Whatever's out there isn't trying to move. It's trying to see. A chill slid across the back of my neck. I returned to the fire pit, adding 2 pieces of wood. The flames rose again, casting warm light around the campsite. For a moment it helped. The glow felt like protection, like a soft barrier against the dark. But then I noticed something I hadn't before. The forest smelled different. Earlier, the air had carried the scent of pine and damp leaves. Now it smelled faintly metallic. Cold. Like blood far away. Or metal that had been touched too many times. I swallowed hard. Nothing was happening. Nothing was wrong. There was no danger. And yet, somewhere in the trees something quietly shifted again. Only this time. It sounded closer. The crunching sound came again, closer this time. No mistaking it. No, maybe it's just an animal this time. This was deliberate. Slow. Heavy. I pointed my flashlight straight into the trees, my hand trembling just enough to make the beam jitter. Hello. The word left my mouth before I could stop it. Instant regret. My voice felt too loud, too exposed in the suffocating silence. It echoed faintly through the trees and then died. Cut off like the forest swallowed it whole. No response. No movement. Nothing. But the feeling in my chest changed. Before it had been anxiety. Now it was certainty. Something was out there. I took a step back toward my tent. The air felt thicker, like invisible weight pressing down on me. The calm night breeze was gone. The temperature dropped suddenly, cold enough that my breath fogged in front of me. Then the forest finally moved. A figure tall, wrong-shaped, stepped just barely into the edge of my flashlight's glow. Not enough to see details. Not enough to understand. Just enough to know it wasn't a person. The outline was too long in the arms, too narrow in the torso, too still in the limbs. It just stood there, watching me. My lungs locked. My hand jerked the flashlight to center the beam, but the figure shifted back into the dark with a single, unervingly smooth step, like it had been waiting for me to try. I stumbled backward so fast I nearly tripped over my own gear. This wasn't an animal. This wasn't a hiker. This wasn't human. I didn't even realize I was whispering until I heard my own words. What the hell is that? The sound came again, branches bending, leaves crunching, moving around the edge of the camp in a slow arc. It was circling me, studying me. My fire cracked sharply, but the flames didn't spread light the way they should have. They felt smaller, weaker, like something was draining the warmth out of them. Shadows stretched further than they should, long and crooked across the ground. The thing moved again. Closer. More confident. I forced myself to stand still, listening. My heartbeat was thundering so hard it made my ears ring. The forest wasn't silent now. It was holding its breath with me. Then I heard it. Breathing. A slow, deliberate inhale from the darkness. Not animalistic. Not human. Something deep and raspy, like it was pulling the cold air through a throat that wasn't built for breathing. My legs went numb. The trees ahead shifted as the figure stepped forward again, this time letting the light hit its face. Or the place where a face should have been. There were no eyes. No mouth. Just stretched, pale skin pulled over something underneath that twitched and flexed like whatever lived inside was pressing against it, trying to shape itself. The top of its head scraped a low branch, and the sound was so sharp, so strange, that my body reacted before my mind did. I backed up fast, knocking over my lantern. The light sputtered, flickered, and died, leaving only my flashlight beam slicing the darkness. The creature tilted its head at the movement. The skin over its face bulged, like it was trying to smile. My throat tightened so violently I couldn't breathe for a second. It stepped forward again, slow, deliberate, methodical. Its long arms grazed the ground and its fingers, too many of them, dug into the dirt as if ready to crawl, run, or leap. That was when the heaviness truly hit. The undeniable, suffocating realization. I wasn't dealing with a presence. I was dealing with a predator. And I was alone with it. The creature straightened slightly, its faceless head lifting toward me, and for the first time in my life, I understood what pure instinctive fear felt like. Not panic, not confusion, not suspense, but the absolute certainty that something was about to attack. And it did. With a single sudden lunge, the thing moved fast, impossibly fast, straight toward my campsite. And every survival instinct in me screamed the same thing: run. The creature launched before my brain even processed the movement. One moment it was crouched, coiled still. The next it was airborne, slicing across the clearing in a blur so fast it looked like the world skipped a frame. I dove sideways. Its limbs hit the ground where I'd been standing with a sickening, bone-cracking thud that shook the dirt under my palms. A sharp, cold gust blasted past me, its breath or whatever passed for breath, sending a freezing sting across my neck like ice dragging over skin. I scrambled to my feet, sprinting blindly into the woods. Branches whipped against my arms and face, snapping loudly as I barreled through underbrush. My lungs burned instantly, but I didn't slow down. I couldn't. Every instinct in my body screamed the same thing. Run. Run now. Do not look back. But behind me I heard it. Not footsteps. Not breathing. Not even movement. I heard the forest distorting around it. Trees creaked violently, leaves shuddered, and shadows rippled as the thing glided between them. It didn't chase like an animal. It shifted, appearing in bursts of impossible motion. Always too close, too fast. A branch snagged my jacket and ripped the sleeve clean off as I sprinted downhill. I nearly fell, catching myself on my palms against the cold dirt. My flashlight slipped from my hand and rolled away, beam spinning wildly across the ground. I lunged for it, but something slammed into a tree nearby so hard the trunk shook. I didn't need to check what caused it. I grabbed the flashlight and bolted. The ground grew uneven as I reached a dry creek bed. My foot caught on a root, sending me crashing forward onto the rocks. Pain shot up my shin, but I pushed through it. I used the fallen tree on the creek's edge to pull myself upright again. But the moment I stood, the beam of my flashlight hit something that froze my blood. The creature stood directly across the creek, closer than it had any right to be. Its limbs hung unnaturally low. Its spine arched backward like it was bending the wrong direction. Its faceless head twitched, like something inside was pushing against the skin, trying to see me better. I staggered backward. It matched me one step slow, deliberate, then it moved again fast. I sprinted uphill, legs screaming, lungs stabbing with every breath. The forest blurred around me, but the creature's outline kept flickering in and out between trees, sometimes behind me, sometimes beside me, each appearance closer than the last. I didn't understand how it moved, or how it kept cutting the distance. But I could feel its presence like cold fingers brushing the back of my neck. I spotted my only chance, my campground. Up ahead. The fire still burning. Light. Open space. Maybe a small advantage. I burst into the clearing, tripping over my own gear as I stumbled toward the fire. I grabbed the first flaming branch I could reach, the heat searing my palm even through adrenaline. I spun around just as the creature lunged. I swung the burning branch. The fire burst in the air, embers exploding outward like sparks from a forge. The creature recoiled violently, its skin writhing as if the light itself hurt it. A deep, distorted screech tore through the clearing. Nothing human, nothing animal, just pure rage and frustration. It slid back into the shadows of the treeline, retreating so fast it looked like reality bent to pull it away. I held the fire in front of me like a shield, trembling, breath ragged, heart thundering against my ribs. The creature hovered at the edge of the light, just beyond the glow, moving slightly left, then right, pacing like a predator calculating distance, waiting for the heat to fade, waiting for the flame to die. It wasn't gone. It wasn't scared. It was patient, watching, waiting, stalking the moment the darkness grew strong enough again. And I realized something horrifying. This creature didn't run out of energy. It didn't get tired. It didn't give up. It was only giving me seconds. Seconds to breathe. Seconds to hope. Seconds to think I survived. Before it tried again. The fire burned lower and lower, each crackling ember reminding me how temporary my safety really was. My hand throbbed from gripping the flaming branch, but I refused to let go. I watched the treeline without blinking, terrified that even 1 second of darkness in my field of vision would give the creature the opening it needed. Minutes crawled by. Or maybe hours. My sense of time had completely fractured. The creature never stepped into the light again. But it never left either. Sometimes I caught a glimpse, a faint shifting silhouette, a ripple in the branches, a distortion in the air like heat waves moving the wrong direction. Then silence. Then nothing. Then the feeling of eyes again. Eventually, the fire shrank to a glowing pile of coals. The orange light dimmed, pulling shadows closer like they were alive. I knew I couldn't sit here forever. I needed help. I needed daylight. I grabbed my backpack, threw everything I could inside, and edged toward the trail leading back to the main campground. I kept one burning stick in my hand even as the last of its flame sputtered. It wasn't much, but it was all I had. When I stepped onto the trail, the forest felt different. Too still. Too quiet. Too expectant. I walked slowly, trying to keep my breathing steady. Every few steps I turned around, checking the path behind me. Nothing there. But my body refused to relax. My nerves felt stretched so thin that even the crunch of my own footsteps made my heart spike. Halfway down the trail I heard movement. Not loud. Not close. Just following. Every time I stopped walking, it stopped too. Every time I took a step, it echoed mine, but a fraction too late, like something mimicking the sound rather than making it. I didn't run. Not yet. I just walked faster and faster until the trees began to thin and the first sliver of dawn broke through the branches. The sky shifted from black to bruised gray. Birds started calling again. Hesitant at first, then louder, like the forest was waking from a nightmare. When I finally reached the ranger station, I practically collapsed onto the steps. The ranger on duty stared at me like I was hallucinating. Dirt covering my face. Clothes torn. Hand burned. Eyes wide and unfocused. I tried to explain everything, the figure, the movements, the screech, the chase, the shadows. I expected disbelief. I expected him to laugh. But instead he went unnaturally still. When I finished talking, he didn't say a word. He just looked past me out the station's window toward the forest. Like he was checking something. Like he was listening. Finally, he asked quietly, "Did it follow you?" The question hit me harder than the creature's screech. Before I could answer, two other rangers arrived. They insisted on checking my campsite. I refused to go back with them, so I waited inside the station, hands shaking, staring at the clock that seemed frozen. When they returned an hour later, they looked confused. "The campsite is untouched," one said. "No tracks," another added. "No broken branches. Nothing disturbed. No signs of an animal or anything else." That was impossible. I showed them the torn sleeve, the burn on my hand, the cuts on my legs, the ripped ground where the creature landed. They exchanged glances. Soft ones. Pitying ones. Like I was traumatized. Or making it up. But then the senior ranger stepped forward, voice low. "Tell me exactly where you saw it disappear." I pointed at the Treeline. He inhaled slowly, held his breath, then exhaled through clenched teeth. Like he recognized something. Like he'd heard this before. Before I could ask what was wrong, he gently closed the station door and locked it. "Listen carefully," he said. "If you ever come back to this forest, don't camp near the ridge. Ever." My stomach dropped. "What's wrong with the ridge?" I asked. He didn't answer. He just looked out the window again toward the trees. And in the reflection of the glass behind him, for a split second, I saw movement. A tall, crooked silhouette, shifting between the pines. Watching. Waiting. As if it knew that I knew. And the moment I blinked, it was gone. But the ranger's face told me he'd seen it too. I'm home now. Safe. Or think I am. But every night since then I hear something outside my window, not walking, not breathing, just mimicking my movements a fraction too late. And I'm starting to wonder,